Good afternoon and welcome to Spectrum Television News at noon. I am Uyai Emem, coming to you live from Uyo, the Akwa Ibom State Capital. Let's take a look at the headlines. Federal government cautions states, councils against borrowing without clearance. INEC finalizes 2027 election timetable despite National Assembly's delay in Electoral Act passage. In other news, United States military confirms deployment of small team to Nigeria amid rising insecurity. We'll bring you the details of these stories and more in a moment. Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. We begin the news at noon from the national scene where President Bola Tinubu has called on the World Bank to support Nigeria's ongoing economic reforms with a focus on agriculture, youth employment and private sector growth as part of his administration's strategy to strengthen the economy and expand opportunities for Nigerians. The president made the remark while receiving a delegation from the World Bank led by Anna Berge, Managing Director of Operations at the State House Abuja. The president highlighted the importance of mechanization and modernization of agriculture to increase productivity and create opportunities for Nigeria's large young population. Sector and other domestic industries as areas where the government is working to improve outputs and strengthen local markets. He stressed that reforms are continuous and must be grounded in transparency, accountability, and stability. In the meantime, President Bola Tinubu has directed the Federal Roads Maintenance Agency to adopt a preventive, planned and evidence-based approach to road maintenance to improve the condition and lifespan of federal roads. Tinubu, represented by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Senator George Akume, gave the directive in Abuja at the 2026 Roads Summit with the theme Sustainable Road Infrastructure for National Growth. The President also tasked the agency to develop a comprehensive geo-referenced national database of failed and failing federal roads. He called for a shift from reactive road repairs to a sustainable, preventive, and evidence-based maintenance framework, stressing that long-term infrastructure resilience depended on accurate data and institutional coordination. The federal government has warned states and local governments against borrowing from financial institutions without a certificate of proof of compliance from the Fiscal Responsibility Commission. The Commission issued the warning during a financial management workshop attended by the 23 local government chairmen in Kaduna, noting that loans gotten without The loans gotten without an FRC certificate are not only against the law, but have serious legal implications. The FRC's Director of Legal Services, Investigation and Enforcement, Charles Abana, represented the executive chairman Victor Maroko, stating that state and local governments needed to understand that the Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2007 does not permit them to borrow for everyday running cost. It also warned financial institutions, especially banks, against granting loans outside the law. Public officers who ignore the law, the Commission said, risk serious sanctions. Now to the red chambers, the senators called on the Ministry of Health and Social Welfare to develop and enforce national guidelines maintaining minimum stock levels of essential antidotes and emergency medicine in designated public and private hospitals across Nigeria. The resolution followed the consideration of a motion sponsored by Senator Adebule Oluranti, APC Lagos West, which drew attention to the urgent need for the federal and state governments to guarantee adequate stocking, availability, and access to life-saving antidotes and emergency medicine nationwide. While presenting the motion, Idiat, a former Lagos State Deputy General, noted that Nigeria continues to witness an increase in medical emergencies, including snake bites, scorpion stings, poisoning, and drug overdoses. The Senate also directed the Federal Ministry of Information and National Orientation Agency, NOA, to embark on nationwide public sensitization campaigns on the importance of prompt hospital presentation after snake bites, poisoning, and other forms of envenomation, as well as the dangers associated with delayed treatment. Now, to the Green Chambers, the House of Representatives has commenced an investigation into the concessioning and management of Nigeria's seaports and airports to assess whether the arrangements have delivered value for money and contributed to the country's economic development. The probe was announced at the inaugural meeting of the ad hoc committee constituted to conduct the investigation. Speaking at the meeting, Speaker of the House, Tajudeen Abbas, said the legislature was determined to ensure that the concession of critical national infrastructure was achieving its intended objectives. According to him, the committee is mandated to investigate, examine, and evaluate the performance of concessionaires operating federal airports and seaport terminals, as well as related shipping activities from 2006 to 2025. Abbas explained that the decision to concession key assets, particularly airports and seaports, was aimed at improving efficiency, attracting private sector investment, modernizing infrastructure, enhancing service delivery, and increasing government revenue while reducing the operational burden on the state. On electoral matters, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has assured of its readiness for the 2027 general election, despite the seeming delay in the passage of the amended Electoral Act currently before the National Assembly. The Commission said it has finalized work on the election timetable and schedule of activities. INEC Chairman Professor Joash Amopitan disclosed this today in Abuja at a meeting with civil society organizations. While he noted that INEC has made its submissions to the National Assembly, Amopitan conceded that some items in the schedule of activities could be impacted by the time the lawmakers pass the Electoral Act. He, however, said for now, the Commission has no choice than to rely on the subsisting Act for its activities. On security matters, the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Waidu Shaibu, says the Nigerian Army, has recalibrated its operational doctrine, force posture, and employment of capabilities through a comprehensive multi-domain strategy to tackle security threats. He said the approach integrates decisive kinetic action with intelligence fusion, interagency cooperation, joint operations with sister services, and sustained international partnerships. The COAS said this when he delivered a lecture titled Combating Asymmetric Threats to National Security in Nigeria, the Nigerian Army in Perspective, at the National Defense College, NDC, in Abuja. General Shaibu noted that the contemporary global security environment has undergone a fundamental transformation, shifting from traditional state-centric warfare to complex intra-state conflicts dominated by non-state actors, including cyber criminals and transnational organized crime networks that exploit governance gaps, societal vulnerabilities, and emerging technologies. Now to Africa. Libyan officials have said that Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, the son of former Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi, has been killed in the town of Zitan. The circumstances of his death have not been announced, but reports say he was killed by armed men in his home. Recall that a Libyan court convicted Saif al-Islam of inciting violence and murdering protesters and sentenced him to death in absentia in 2015. He was also wanted by the International Criminal Court on charges of crimes against humanity related to the 2011 uprising, but he was released in June 2017 and has since lived in Zitan. On the foreign scene, the United States military has officially acknowledged the presence of American troops in Nigeria, confirming that a limited contingent of U.S. forces has been deployed to the country. This marks the first public confirmation of U.S. boots on the ground since American airstrikes carried out in December. According to reports, the announcement was made by the head of the United States Africa Command, Dagvin Anderson, who explained that the deployment followed a bilateral understanding between Washington and Abuja aimed at boosting counter-terrorism cooperation. Still on the foreign scene, at least 14 migrants have reportedly died after a speedboat carrying them collided with a Hellenic Coast Guard vessel off the coast of the island of Chios yesterday. Greek authorities said the speedboat was making dangerous maneuvers and that a pursuit was underway at the time of the collision in the Chios Strait near the village of Vrontates. 24 people were rescued, some of whom were seriously injured, and others are reportedly still missing. Reports say a search and rescue operation was still ongoing, which involved 4 Coast Guard vessels, a privately owned boat carrying civilian divers, and a helicopter. Still to come in the news. Super Falcons to open camp February 20 ahead of WAFCON 2026. Stay tuned for details of this and more in a moment. Welcome back and thanks for staying tuned in. Now to conclude the news on this hour. On our business news, the federal government has allocated 881.13 million naira to total capital projects of the Nigerian Export Promotion Council (NEPC) in the 2026 appropriation bill, following an all-time high non-oil export record of $6.1 billion in 2025. Data from the 2026 budget proposal submitted to the National Assembly showed that the allocation targets institutional strengthening, export infrastructure, certification, market access, and value chain development across the 6 geopolitical zones. The allocation is included in the proposed 58.47 trillion naira federal budget and growing policy emphasis on diversifying foreign exchange earnings away from crude oil. A breakdown of the NEPC capital vote showed that the highest allocation of 143.99 million naira went to the establishment of clusters, aggregation centers, and hubs in the 6 geopolitical zones, and 133 million naira was set aside for the establishment of common facility centers and export skills acquisition centers in 4 geopolitical zones for top regional products, amongst others. Still in business, the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edun, has said that sustained economic reforms and stronger private sector participation are central to Nigeria's ambition to achieve at least 7% GDP growth by 2027 to 2028. Edun made the observation at the African Business Convention held in Lagos, where he maintained that Nigeria is firmly on course for accelerated growth despite tightening global financial conditions and rising geopolitical uncertainty. Edun, who was represented by the Permanent Secretary of the Federal Ministry of Finance, Raymond Omachi, said the government's economic strategy is focused on restoring macroeconomic stability, boosting productivity, and deepening inclusion rather than relying on oil-driven growth. On our health news, the State Director of the National Orientation Agency (NOA) Osun Directorate, Adebiyi Stephen, has called on the Osun populace to intensify efforts towards cancer prevention, early detection, and equitable access to care. The plea formed part of a statement released today as part of activities in the state to mark the World Cancer Day 2026, observed annually on February 4. In the statement issued by the Public Relations Officer of the agency, Bumi Olasinde, Adebiyi noted that cancer remained a major public health challenge in Nigeria, with many cases diagnosed at advanced stages due to low awareness, stigma, myths, and limited access to screening services. He stressed that these factors significantly contribute to the high rate of cancer-related deaths in the country. Adebiyi also said the annual observance provided an opportunity to draw attention to the persistent cancer care gap and the urgent need for early action. Still in health, senior medical experts have warned that men who neglect proper genital hygiene are at increased risk of infection and, in rare cases, cancerous changes. According to the doctors, the accumulation of sweat, dirt, and microorganisms around the genital area creates a favorable environment for infections, which, when left untreated, may progress to chronic inflammation and abnormal cellular changes. They noted that despite the preventable nature of many of these conditions, poor health, seeking behavior, and lack of awareness continue to expose many men to avoidable health risks. Now to sports. Nigeria's Super Falcons will open training camp for the 2026 Women's Africa Cup of Nations on Friday, February 20. Justin Madugu's side will train in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, before jetting out to Abidjan for the WAFU Invitational Tournament in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire. Ghana and Senegal will also participate in the tournament, which will run from February 27 to March 7. The defending champions are also expected to take part in more friendly games before the start of the WAFCON 2026 finals. The tournament will also serve as the qualifier for the 2027 FIFA Women's World Cup to be hosted by Brazil. Still in sports, Morocco Football Federation says it has decided to appeal a ruling that resulted in fines of $415,000 and match bans because of a chaotic Africa Cup of Nations final. Recall that CAF, Africa's soccer's governing body, last month fined the host in Senegal over unrest at last month's final in the Moroccan capital. Senegal won the game 1-0 after extra time and decided not to appeal the ruling. The Moroccan Federation and national team player Ismail Sabari were issued fines totaling $415,000. Sabari and a teammate were also banned from games. Morocco sees CAF sanctions as disproportionate to the incident. On entertainment news, businessman Olakunle Churchill has reunited with his former wife Tonto Dike and their son King Andre following a decade-long public feud. Recall that Tonto Dike initiated contact with Churchill, extending an olive branch after years of silence. And that is all we have on the news bulletin at this hour. Do well to follow us on social media, subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website, spectrumtvlive.ng. This has been Spectrum Television News at 12. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day. We are MM. Good afternoon.